How's it going, everybody? My name is John Bianchi. I'm the Airbnb data guy, and today I'm going to be talking about Rentalizer, Rabu, Awning, all of these companies that are predicting how much your property is actually going to make on an annual basis. The one that you're considering to buy or to rent. The idea is that with these tools, like the ones I'm going to show you right now, the idea is that you can just plug in the address and it's going to say, hey, this property is going to make X amount of dollars. It's going to make $100,000. It's going to make $200,000. Whatever it may be. You've got Rentalizer, you've got Rabu, and you've got Awning. All of these companies are wrong, and it frustrates me more than you can possibly understand that these companies are allowing these things to exist and allowing you guys out there to actually try and use them to figure out exactly how much they're going to make. And I'm going to prove to you right now that they are actually very inaccurate. So I do this full time. I'm a full-time Airbnb data analyst for an investment fund. I've decided where over $37 million is going to be invested in the past year or so. And it's my job to figure out exactly how much a property is going to make before we ever actually get it, okay? And so what you're looking at right here on this left-hand side, I took a whole bunch of properties that I had analyzed in the past, and now we have them, they're up and running, we have actual track records, we know how much these properties are actually going to make. And what I did was I figured out like how accurate was AirDNA's Rentalizer tool in comparison to me going through my process and trying to figure out exactly how much the property was going to make. And what you'll see here is that anything that's saying like 200%, they were off by 100%. Okay, so this first one here, that prediction was off by 121%. So if I had said that the property was going to make 100,000, Rentalizer said that the property was going to make 221%. That's how off that the Rentalizer tool was. Imagine if you went out there and you actually purchased a property because you thought that the property was going to make 221,000 when in reality it was going to make 100,000. And I actually know somebody who did that, and they bought a property that was well over $1 million that they thought was going to make $300,000 a year, and it wasn't even close. And so that's literally the reason why I'm making this video. But let me continue. So you can see everything up here, they've over predicted. They said it was going to end up making too much. Everything down here, they under predicted. So these are actually a whole bunch of scenarios where we would have missed out on the opportunity to purchase this. That's not as big of a deal, but it's still kind of annoying when that happens. And then anything that's kind of dead in the middle is where the Rentalizer and I were kind of equal. Now, the problem I have with this is that you can see it's split up kind of 30, 30, 30. Some they're over, some they're under, some we're kind of like right on. But you don't know which one you're getting. You don't know if they're over predicting, under predicting, or anything. And this is true for Rabu and Awning. I'm just picking on Rentalizer right now, but the reality is that you don't know which one you're getting. Okay, and I can prove it because on the right hand side here we have these properties. They're up and running. They've been going for a while. Anything that you see in yellow, I'm almost 100%. Sorry, all these percentages here are how close I was to getting it right from my original prediction before we even had the home as an Airbnb in the first place. Okay. And so anything that's yellow, I'm almost 100% accurate. Anything that's green, I was actually conservative, okay? Which means that, which is technically an okay thing to do. I said it was going to make 100, it ends up making 125,000. Everyone's happy, right? As long as it works at 100,000, no one's upset. Wherever it's in red is where I over predicted. And so what you'll see is that there's 1, 2, 3, 4 of them where I was within 25%, and then there was 2 where I was off by about 50%. And we're working on different little strategies to increase those revenues to get them a little bit closer to what I predicted. But I will take ownership. I am 27 out of 29 predictions within 25%, whether I'm being conservative or not. Okay, so that's pretty good in my eyes. I'm thinking almost 90% or over 90%. Like that's pretty good to be getting it right in comparison to what's happening here over with Rentalizer, where you don't know if they're over predicting, under predicting, or maybe it's right. And so what I'm doing, the reason I'm making this video is I'm going to give you my process for free because that's what I do. I make these videos where I teach people my process. I give it all out for free. I've got a whole bunch of courses on YouTube. I've got 3 different courses on YouTube. And that's just what I like to do because I hate the idea of people going out there and buying $1 million home, thinking it's going to make 300,000. It's not even going to get close to it. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to teach you my 4-step process to an Airbnb property valuation, okay? Once again, the issue that we're having is that we don't know what the gross revenue is going to be. It's a really impossible or hard thing to predict. The gross revenue number is the top line number. It is how much is this property going to make before all expenses, right? So like how much money does it generate in total? And then, your net income is like after expenses. But that's a whole other scenario. All we care about is that very, very top number because that's the hardest number to figure out. Now, kind of think about this when it comes to annual rentals. With an annual rental, you can just simply look at your neighbors and see, okay, so that one bedroom's renting out for $1,000, so is that one, and so is that one. Therefore, my one bedroom that I just purchased is probably going to rent out for $1,000. Therefore, I'm going to make $12,000 a year off this property. But when it comes to Airbnb, there's so many different other little factors that come into play that you just may not know about. If I have a hot tub, if I have a backyard, if I have a larger backyard. We have one home where the backyard is significantly larger than the other one, and it makes $60,000 more. They're the exact same homes. They're in the exact same location. They're both 5 bedrooms. They're down the street from each other, but one just has a bigger yard, right? So like all of these tiny little details matter so much for how much your property is actually going to make. And so that's why I'm going to walk you through my process that will help you understand exactly how to get there. Now, we've already established that Rentalizer and the revenues tool and Rabu, they're all wrong. They don't predict it properly. Maybe they're right sometimes, but you don't know if they're right. And that's the problem. Now, here's another little proof of the pudding that I actually know what I'm doing. I have done so many property valuations in the past 7 months that I broke Google Sheets and it said that there was a problem. It said we can't add any more sheets. You've hit the limit, which I didn't even know was a possibility. But I've done so many property evaluations that I've literally hit the limit, which means that I've been doing this over and over and over and over again. I actually did 4 of them today alone, okay? And I've already shown you this, that this is, proof that my process is actually working, and that's what we're going to get into. And I apologize that it took 6 minutes, but we're getting into it, so let's get into it. All right, so first off, I use the Burger King logic, right? So McDonald's spends millions of dollars to figure out what corner they want to be on, and Burger King opens up across the street with the exact same product. And so the reason that this works so well is because Burger King is using the data of McDonald's to replicate what's already working and take some of that business for themselves. And it seems so simple, but it works. You're just looking at the data to figure out what's working, what corner of the street is working, how much money are people making within a certain area, and then you're replicating what they're doing, and then you're getting the same traffic and revenue that they're actually making. It sounds so simple, but I promise you it works, all right? Now, here's my 4-step process. First off, we have to review your property. We want to memorize it. So what I'm talking about your property, I'm saying the property that you're considering to buy, spend thousands and thousands of dollars on, invest into this home, or the home that you're looking to rent, right? Because this also works for rental arbitrage. It's the exact same idea. And somebody who's doing rental arbitrage, it's usually just as big of a deal to sign a lease as it is to buy a home, because generally it's all of your money. I know for myself, when I got my first rental arbitrage deal, it was all of my money. I actually borrowed money to make that deal happen. Then I borrowed more money to make the next deal happen. And so it was a big deal. And if you're borrowing money, you want to make sure you're getting it right. You want to make sure that the property is actually going to make money. That's a great way. Everything I'm going to teach you, a little side tangent here. If you're going to be raising money from somebody, if you use this process to be able to prove that the home that you're about to buy, lease, or whatever is actually going to make X, then an investor is going to be way more willing to actually give you the money to invest into that property because you just used a process to prove it rather than just a software that maybe works, maybe it doesn't work, okay? So there's a little side tip, but let's get back into it. Now, the process is, first, we are going to review your property and we're going to memorize every single last thing, every single last detail. How many bedrooms, bathrooms? I'm going to get into it. I'm not going to get into it just yet. Then we're going to extract only good data from AirDNA. Now, I just bashed on AirDNA for the first 6 minutes of this video. However, they do have golden nuggets within their data. About 90% of their data, usually 80, 90%, maybe some places 95%, of the data in AirDNA is completely useless. And I cannot stress that enough. It is completely useless. And so I'm going to teach you how to extract good data, okay? And then once we've done that, super simple step here. We just organize it by who's making the most and who's making the least, okay? And then what we do from there is we then use logic to figure out where our property will land within this grouping of homes, all right? So let's get into it. Step 1, review your property, memorize it, okay? The reason I'm telling you to memorize it is because you're going to be staring at hundreds of other homes to try and figure out which property your one matches up best with. And so you have to remember every single last little detail of your property so that you can memorize all the other details of the other property to figure out which ones you best match up with. So the things I want you to memorize is every tiny little, like the quality of your home. What is it? Is it luxury? Is it high end? Does it need work? Does it have character? Is it Spanish style? Is it, I don't know, whatever it is it a new build, whatever, right? What are your key features that you have in this home? How big is your backyard? Do you have a backyard? Do you have a pool? Do you have a rooftop patio? Do you have a deck? How big is your deck? What kind of pool do you have? Is it a square pool? Is it a round pool? Is it an insert pool? All of these different little things you need to memorize and keep in mind because they're going to matter and then they're going to depend on how much revenue you're going to end up making. How much common space do you have in this area? Do you just have, just a living room? You have no dining room and there's no other extra common space? Or do you have like 3 living rooms? You have a lofted space. You've got a massive basement. Like, what is the scenario that you're running into? Because once again, we're going to need to compare that to the other homes we're going to be looking at. How many beds and bath? That's a super simple one. Where's your location? Super simple one. Do you have a garage or not? That's one that kind of can very easily slip through, but a garage can be a great little revenue driver if you know how to utilize it, okay? And so I'm looking at a home right here. I am Canadian. This is our Canadian site, but usually this is going to be seen by Americans. So you're going to be looking at Zillow or the other sites that exist. So let's get into the next thing here, which is extracting good data. So step 2, this is without a doubt the most important step to get right. Okay, so this is the part where if you screw this up, you're going to be the person who buys $1 million home and thinking you're getting 300,000, but you're actually not because you're using bad data. I know this for a fact for myself because one time I almost signed 2 $7,000 a month leases thinking that the homes were going to be making over $160,000 a year because of bad data that I was using. I ended up figuring out a way around it. That's why I'm considered the Airbnb data guy, because I obsess over this stuff. But the reality is that you can make that mistake. I almost did it myself. Please don't do it. Just get good data. We'll keep watching along and we're going to get there, okay? So first off, what is good data? Okay, so what makes something good data? Now, before I get into this entire section, I'm going to let you know that because this is really something that you have to know really in depth, I'm not going to explain every single last detail in extreme depth on this because I have another video that explains it extremely well, okay? And so I will link it, but if you go to if you go to YouTube and you type in my name, and if you go to my playlist and you look up the Masterclass 2.0, you'll see that I have this entire free course on YouTube already. And in here teaches you pretty well like how to understand an entire market's worth of data. However, in one section here, we have avoiding bad data. So I've already made a 23-minute video that teaches you everything about bad data. So instead of taking 23 minutes on this call to explain all of those things again, I'm going to kind of jump into it a little bit quicker. But you know what? Just for the sake of it right now, I'm going to post this video. The video, it's going to be hovering right around there somewhere. You can click it, open it up, come back to this video, continue it. And when you finish this video, hop back over to that video when the time comes, okay? And so that way you have the actual link and we can get into it. Now, let's get back into what we're trying to do here, which is trying to figure out how much a property is going to make, doing a property valuation, okay? And we're on that second step, which is extracting good data. Now, I will explain this. So first off, what is good data? The first thing you need to have good data is a full-time active Airbnb host, okay? So not every single Airbnb that is active is a full-time host. Sometimes you just have people who rent it out on the weekends. Sometimes you have people who rent it out while they're gone on vacation. Some people do it for a few months and then they stop, but the AirDNA has tracked that data and so now they have it, right? What we want people who are doing it full-time, just like we are going to be doing it full-time, right? Because we need to see those annual revenue numbers with no interruptions, no stops, nothing. We want to see that active running business, okay? Then the next thing you need is you actually need AirDNA to have been tracking that data of that individual for at least 250 days. Now, the way that AirDNA works is that they have an algorithm which goes into the calendar of every single Airbnb in the entire world every single day, and they record the calendar. So one day they'll go in there, they see that it's unbooked and it's up for $100. Then they come back the next day and they see it's booked and they know that it was up for $100, so they assume that person made $100, right? And so then they record that and then they do that again and they do it over and over and over and over again. And by doing that, we're able to figure out exactly how much these homes are making, which is gold, right? And so we need two things here. We need a full-time host who's doing it all the time, and then we need AirDNA to be tracking it for over 250 days. And right here where it says days available, really this should say days tracked because that's how long AirDNA has been tracking this listing. And so when we look at this, we're like, okay, AirDNA has been tracking this for 300 days. Within those 300 days, they have made $75,000. And so they've got 65 more days to go. So if I take, this number here, 402, and I take 62%, and I times that by 365, that's going to tell me how much they made over the entire year, and that's likely reliable data, okay? So that's essentially what good data is, and the place where we want to start with it. Now, these are going to be the different ways we want to avoid bad data. There's sort of a quick list here. I'm going to run through it. First off, you want it to be an entire home listing. We don't care about private rooms or anything else. You want it to be over 250 days. You want to make sure that there's over 20 reviews, okay? And you want to check their reviews over the past 12 months to ensure that they have had at least 1, 2, 3, 4 reviews every single month for the past 12 months, because that's how you can easily check that someone's an active host. Because if you're hosting full time, you know that you're going to be getting a review, at least one every single month. It's just how it works. Another thing you want to make sure is that their calendar is spotty, because every single active Airbnb host will have a spotty calendar. Somebody who is blocking their calendar and not actually letting anyone book, they're just blocking it, it's going to be completely blocked, and it looks very clean. And an active Airbnb host does not have a very clean calendar. Now, the next thing is you want to make sure that sometimes you're going to run across somebody who has significantly more. Making significantly more, you can just ignore it. Usually it's wrong. I'm not going to explain this. Sometimes the listing is just really bad, so it just looks terrible. You would never put a listing up that bad. They have like really old furniture in there. They took photos with their phone in the middle of the night for some reason, and it just is a terrible, terrible listing. And you just don't want to consider that listing whatsoever. So that's a bad listing. Just forget about it. The other thing is that the link doesn't open. So that happens every once in a while. If you follow this little checklist here and use the logic of what I explained over here of a full-time host, that'll be the way that you avoid bad data, and then you ensure that you're only collecting good data. And when you do that, you're going to be able to find good properties that match up with your home. Okay. Now, the purpose of this step is to extract good data. Now, I just explained what good data is, but now we have to talk about what the extracting part. Okay. And so what you're going to be doing is you're going to be going on to AirDNA. And when you're on AirDNA, you can go into their map tool. And on their map tool, you can hover over. You have to buy a subscription to be able to get access the information, and it costs $100 for 1 month for one location. And if you can just extract that information quick enough, it only costs you $100, which is well worth the investment, right? But what you can see is that you hover over it and you can find good pieces of data. So like here's over 350 days, over 74 reviews. That's likely good data. And so what I would do is I would then I would essentially just take this information, and then I would then apply it to a spreadsheet like you see here, right? And on this spreadsheet, we have certain pieces of information that we're going to be pulling from that from AirDNA and bringing it into a spreadsheet. And the reason we're bringing it into a spreadsheet is because it's significantly easier to understand the data when it's all in nice even rows like that, and you can see patterns and you can see trends, because that's all that data is. It's just patterns and trends. And so we want to extract all of this information, every good piece of data that we can find from AirDNA for that matches up with our location, matches up with our bedrooms, matches up with our common space area, matches up with our common features, our backyard, whatever features the home has that you're looking at, whatever they have, you want to find the homes that are closest to yours. On AirDNA, you want to find them, then you want to ensure that it's good data. Then when you've figured out that it's good data, you then select it, and then you take each of these pieces of information, and you then put it into the spreadsheet, as you can see here. Okay, in this spreadsheet, if you go into the description down below, there will be a link to be able to get this template. All you're going to do is have to give me your email and subscribe, and then you get it, because that's how these things work. You will get it for free. Okay, so anyways, what you want to do, once again, is just focus on pulling out properties and extracting it into your spreadsheet, and taking all of these pieces of information. So as you can see here, I've got a filled out example of what it would actually end up looking like, right? Now, one little thing that I haven't explained yet is this formula that you're going to want to do. So sometimes when you pull out data, some homes have been tracked for 300 days, and some homes have been tracked for 365 days. The issue with the homes that have been tracked for 300 days is that you're missing 65 days worth of revenue. And so it's going to look like that home is making less, when in reality, it might be actually making more than the home that's been tracked for 365 days. And so what you want to do is you want to make one column right here, and it's going to be called your full year rev. And what you're simply going to do is you're going to use this formula where you go equal, then 365 times ADR, which is the average daily rate. And then you're going to also times it by the occupancy, which is the occupancy rate here, right? And when you do that, it's going to give you what that home would have likely made over the full year. And it's not perfect, but it's close enough. Okay. And I've been doing this long enough that the little variances that you would expect over that, extra 2 months is not anything to sweat over. It's not a big deal. It's totally fine. It ends up working out. Okay. But it's just good for all of the properties to be extrapolated over the full year, so that it's very apples to apples comparison when you're actually going through and reviewing each individual one. Okay. So what have we done so far? First off, we've memorized the property. We know every single last detail of this property. And then we figured out what good data is. And then with the memorization of our property, we went and found all of the comparable properties on AirDNA that match up best with our property. We then took that information, and just so anyone who doesn't know with AirDNA, you can click on here and it's going to pop open that Airbnb listing, and there's more data on here that you're going to pull out. Okay. And we took all that data and we extracted it and we plugged it into our spreadsheet, right? And that is a very important step that I just spent almost 10 minutes explaining, because you have to get it right. You have to be pulling out that right information. If you pull out that right information, plug it in the spreadsheet, you're then going to have little bits of gold that is, I like to refer to it as gold mining. You're literally mining for gold, because now this little data and this information you can then use to make educated decisions on how much your property is going to make, right? So we've got it all in there. Now, the next thing, this is a super simple one. Organize it by profitability. Organize it by who's making the most to who's making the least. Okay. And so the steps with this, for anyone who doesn't know Excel, this is going to seem super simple to some people. And for other people, you're going to be like, thank God he showed me this. So what you want to do is you want to highlight all the data that you pulled out. Okay. And then you just want to click this little button right here, which is a filter button. And what happens is that gives you the option to click this little button right here. So this is going to pop up. And what you can do is you can click that button. And when you click that button, it's going to tell you to sort from Z to A. You have the option to sort from Z to A. So click that, and then what's going to happen is all the data is then going to be in order of who's making the most to who's making the least, which is kind of what you can see here. All of these homes are in order of who's making the most to who's making the least, okay? So that's step 3. Super easy, right? But super critical. The reason this is critical, okay, just so everyone understands, is because when you're going to be reviewing this data, you're going to be reviewing it from who's making the most to who's making the least, and you're going to be able to see very clearly why this person's making 200,000 and why this person's making 100,000 and why all these homes are making in between those two, right? It's going to become very clear. You're going to see less amenities, worse listings, smaller homes as you get lower down that list. And it's easy, and being able to see it in that sort of visual context is super helpful to figure out exactly where your property lands, which is the next step. Where does your property land within this scenario? Okay. So what we've done is we've organized it once again, top to bottom. And so we've got that done. And when you're looking at this, okay, real quick, before I kind of jump into all the next little steps, if we just take a look at this real quick, it just kind of looks like a whole bunch of numbers. However, let's look at it a little bit more in depth, okay, and look for a pattern. And what I see when I look at this is I see there's one person who's absolutely killing it and making $140,000 a year. Congrats, well done, good for you. And as you can notice, all of these are 2 bedrooms, okay? They're all the exact same sized units. They're all in the exact same area, but this person here is absolutely crushing it. And then you have 2 homes here that are roughly making $120,000 a year, which is pretty interesting. Then you have 3 homes here that are roughly making around $100,000. Then you have a couple down here that are actually making almost $80,000, and then one guy who's just not doing too hot and he's down at 65. So what I see is I see groupings, I see patterns. I see there's a one-off person up here and down here. I see some people that are doing pretty well. I see a nice little middle pack, and I see a little below the middle pack, okay? And what will literally happen is as you go through all this, you will be able to understand why some people are making 120 and why some people are making 80. And it'll become super clear. And it's the best thing in the world. And it's how you figure out how much your property is going to make. But I'm going to go into a little bit more detail with these next slides. So just want to point that out first. Now, what we're going to be doing, okay, is we're going to be comparing listings to yours. So the one that you're thinking about buying or releasing, whatever it may be, you want to make notes on every single feature and amenity of the properties that you just extracted and pulled into your spreadsheet. Okay, so let me pull up that spreadsheet again. What you'll see here is first off, we have all of the comps and we can pull in all of their information. And then what we have below it is notes. So I have a whole section here and I make detailed notes on every single one of those properties. I lay out everything that I see in that home so that I don't miss anything, even down to the size of the living room in comparison to the living room that we're looking at and the other person's living room. And I have a whole list here. So before I go on a little tangent here, so you're looking at the quality. Is it luxury? Is it average? What is the pool style? What is the hot tub? Is there space for one? What is the square footage of this home? Is it how's the Airbnb listing quality? Are the good photos, bad photos? What are the sort of key features that this home has, such as like a rooftop patio, the backyard, the size of the backyard? What is the interior design? This goes so far, the interior design. It's not even funny. Do they have a good design? Is it designed by grandma? Is it just stuff that they found off the side of the road? Is it luxury stuff? Like, what is the design? Do they have a boho theme? Does it match the customer archetype of the people that are planning on staying there? Does it go for families? Does it go for bachelorette people? There's so many different things when it comes to design. It's not even funny. What is the style of the kitchen, the bathroom? High quality, low quality, mid quality, really old? Is there a game room? Is there a second living room that's turned into a game room? Is there a whole basement that's turned into a game room? If so, how good is the game room? Is it immersive, or is it just a pool table in the middle of a room, right? What is that? So what other extra attainments do they have? Do they have cornhole? Do they have mini putt? Do they have giant Jenga? Do they have a bocce ball court? Do they have a basketball court? What do they have? List up all these extra little things that they provided. The quality of the furniture, kind of already touched on that one. Airbnb photos, already touched on that one. Location, when you're pulling it out, it should have been within the location as you were thinking already. So, all right, those are all of the tiny little details that you want to be doing, and you want to make a note on every single one of these. This may sound tedious, okay? I'm going to kind of stop for a second and just tell you, this sucks. This process is so tedious, and it is so frustrating to go through every single little last detail. But I promise you, if you do this, you're going to know how much the property is going to make before you get it. Remember, this is what I do for a living. This is how it works. This process works, okay? I promise you, I promise you, I promise you. And so what you're going to do, okay, is as you're going through this, what's going to end up happening is you're going to, I'm not going to read this because it's a little confusing. What's going to happen, okay, is you've now made notes on every single one of those properties, and you know exactly what your property looks like in comparison to all the other properties. And what you ended up figuring out was that, I'm going to use this same little example here. You're looking at it and you may think to yourself, you go, okay, you know what? These two homes making 120, they just have a little bit of a bigger property and a little bit of, a better quality kitchen and bath, right? It's a little bit bigger. The backyard's a little bit better. And the kitchen and bath's a little bit better. It's not like drastically better like this one that's doing 140 where it's like, I can't compete with that. It's so much better. It's luxury, whatever it is. But it's like, I'm right behind these guys making 120, okay? And then you think to yourself like, shoot, you know what I mean? Like, I wish I could make that much. I'm so close, but my home just doesn't have the bones or the structures, built into it to be able to compete with that. And then the next thing you're going to do is you're going to look at this grouping. You're going to realize like, you know what? I'm actually really, really close with these homes making 100,000. We have the same sort of size home. I can definitely compete with their game room. My backyard, I can definitely do the same things that they're doing. I can add the exact same amenities. I can do everything that these guys are doing. And honestly, I could probably do it a little bit better than them. And that's what you probably might be feeling as you're going through and you're like, I think that we could definitely land within this range of 100,000. I feel like we can based off of what I'm seeing, right? And then what you do is you go to you don't stop there. You don't go, I feel like we're going to land here, so let's call it a day, right? The next thing you do is you then go to the next grouping and you go, okay, these homes making 80,000. What should happen is you look at it and you go, oh, these ones making 80,000, we're going to beat them no problem. Like that's a joke. Like these homes, like we have a bigger place. We actually have a second living room that we're going to add a game room in, which is going to give us so much more pull for people when they want to book. They don't even have a hot tub. We're definitely going to be adding a hot tub. So like when you're looking at these 80,000, you should be like, well, that's a joke. We're definitely going to beat them. That's how you should feel when you're reviewing it. You should know internally, like, yeah, I'll do better than these guys, right? Then the one doing 65 should be an absolute joke. You should almost not even consider it. You should look at it and be like, well, of course we're going to beat that, right? And so what ends up happening is you go through this process and you've kind of figured out where your property lands potentially within this range. And so what I always do, and there's a section on this sheet, once again, for you to do right in here where it says, reasoning for revenue. You got to reason to yourself where you're actually landing, okay? And so in here, this is what I do. And I write these big ass briefs all the time, listing out every single last little detail. It's like, okay, comp 2 and 4, we can beat for a variety of reasons. Comp 1 is an interesting blah, 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 blah. I'm not going to read all through this, but you can read through it if you want. There's probably a bunch of spelling mistakes. I do them really quickly. But the point is that I reasoned and I logicked with myself of truly being critical about the property that I had and determining where it was going to land based off of the way, the structure of it, the things I couldn't change and the things I could change, okay? And so what ends up happening is you come out with this 100% confidence that your property is going to make X, okay? This is this sort of little number right here. And if you use that little scenario that we were just looking at, you are 100% confident that your property is going to make 100,000. You're like, I just know it. We match up perfectly well. They're making 100,000. We can make 100,000. I can probably do it even a little bit better, but I feel really confident we're going to make 100,000, right? And so you write in, you're like, I'm going to make 100,000. And then the best case scenario, right, is that sort of you were looking at those homes making 120 and you're going, I think we're going to get there, but you don't know for sure, but you might be able to if you do X, Y, and Z, right? So you tell yourself, you're like, I'm not going to say I'm going to make 120,000, but I think we could. And so that's your best case scenario. You have the potential. You know you don't have the potential for 140, but you have it for 120. And then from there, what you want to do is you want to write in your worst case scenario. You want to say, I think worst case scenario is we're going to make 80,000. These ones that I'm really confident that we're going to beat, like what if, the tides turn, the recession happens, things go down. I just can't put this property together the way that I want to put it together. And we end up making 80,000. That's your worst case scenario. Now, let me explain to you right now, the absolute best properties to buy or rent are going to be the ones that work at your best case scenario, or sorry, that work at your worst case scenario. You review all the numbers and you go, even if we hit our worst case scenario, I'm still happy. Whatever happy is to you, whatever amount of money that you're going to be making from it, you're happy with the worst case scenario. Those are the absolute best properties to get. Now, it doesn't always work out. Those are referred to as home runs because you're happy at worst case scenario and you have the potential of best case scenario, right? So it's just like everything in between is gravy. Whatever happens, happens, right? Now, that's usually, rare. It's a home run scenario. And most of the times you're going to be doing your best to strive to hit that best case scenario, and that's going to be making you happy. But, you can live with that worst case scenario. So anyways, just wanted to make a quick little tangent on that and point that out. Now, additionally, once we've done this, okay, let's celebrate for a second before hopping to the next part, because you did it. You literally figured out the hardest thing to figure out in the Airbnb game, which is, what is my top line number? What is my gross revenue number for this potential property that I'm going to get? You figured out the best case scenario, worst case scenario, and where you think you're going to actually land. And so by doing that, you now have the hardest thing to answer. And now you can make a decision with that number about if you should move forward on that property or not, okay? And so once you have that number, you can then plug everything else in. Everything else is figure outable. All of your expenses are very simple to figure out. If you don't want to figure out how much it costs to clean a place, you make a couple of phone calls. Utilities, you make a couple of phone calls, you Google it, whatever it may be. If you want to look into insurance, HOAs, gas, internet, you make some phone calls. They're very, very easy numbers to figure out. The hardest one to figure out is that top line revenue number, and we just did it. So kudos to you guys. Kudos to everybody out there. If you followed this for 31 minutes, congrats. Appreciate you. I hope to God this helps you more than you know. But I just want to make a couple of different little shout outs here. First off, if you enjoyed this, please like and subscribe. It helps me more than anything. And to be honest, I just want this video to get to as many people's eyeballs as possible because I know how much it's going to be helpful. It's great that it grows everything and all of that different stuff. That's great. But just, I want more people to see it. So if anything, share it. Share it with somebody that you know who's struggling and needs this kind of help, or uses Rentalizer, uses Rebu, or whatever it may be. However, on top of that, I want to tell you some other things too, okay? First off, I have 3 free courses on YouTube about Airbnb data and tons of this long form content giving you all of the information. I don't make entertaining content. I make educational content. It is my biggest downfall. It's the reason nobody knows about me. But regardless, the thing is that I have all this information, and what this is going to do for you, okay? It's going to help you identify what market to go into. It's going to help you identify what you should be getting in that market. And it's also going to help you figure out how to maximize the revenue out of that property that you're planning on getting, which is everything you need to do when it comes to buying a property for sure and renting a property, okay? When it comes to Airbnb. So I have it all for free online. Go through it. Take the time. Promise you it's worth it. But my bread and butter, the thing that I do the best, is I create reports that help you figure out exactly how much these reports right here are my bread and butter because they can help you identify where is the absolute best place to purchase a property in this scenario, all of Chicago. So I have a way, I have data that allows you to see all of Chicago. So real quick, I'll explain this to you. On the left-hand side, we've got all the zip codes in Chicago, and up top, we have all the different unit sizes. So a studio, 1 bedroom, 2 bedroom, 3 bedroom, so on and so forth. Where those two connect is the average annual revenue for an Airbnb in that zip code. So it's roughly making about $40,000 a year. All you have to do is look for the biggest number. Wherever the biggest number is likely where the most money is being made, right? As you can see here, 4 bedrooms are roughly making $113,000, $110,000. These two are both making $100,000. So clearly there's a lot of money being made with the 4 bedrooms when it comes to Chicago, and even more potentially with the 5 bedrooms. And so within seconds, you're like, oh, that makes more sense. I'm going to pay attention to these, couple of zip codes in the 4 bedroom area. And now, right, so we've got 5 zip codes that we're paying attention to and 1 bedroom size we're paying attention to, as opposed to all of these different zip codes you could be looking into in Chicago. It's just how is that not absolute, the best possible thing to figure out exactly where you should be going in any market? I can do this for literally any market. And so if you're watching this still and you're intrigued by this, down below, there's a link. These are called profit maps, okay? Look for the link that's called profit map. Maybe it's called market analysis. I kind of use those interchangeably. And what it's going to do is it's going to pop open a link to my website. And on my website, I have a video that explains them more in depth. Take 5 minutes, watch this real quick, and learn everything about these profit maps and how they can be useful for you in your industry. Now, if you don't know what market you want to go into, what I recommend is you click this little button right here. I created another tutorial video, training video that teaches you everything you need to know about going into a specific market. Okay, all the details, everything you need to know. It's another 31-minute video, and it's very, very detailed about how to identify the best Airbnb market for you. So I'm going to end it there. This is everything. Please like and subscribe, but more importantly, share this with people who need it. Don't use Rentalizer. Don't use Rabu. Take the time to do this. This is a true investment for you, and I hope this has been helpful. Signing off. Have a good day.